Good morning and welcome to our webinar on the Skłodowska-Curie Research and Innovation Staff Exchange. My name is Sibylla Martinelli and I'm the national contact point for the Skłodowska-Curie actions, and I will guide you through this webinar. This is the outline of today's event. I will briefly explain you the setup of this webinar, say a word on the status of Switzerland in Horizon 2020, and introduce very briefly the Skłodowska-Curie actions in general. Then we will directly go into the modalities of the topic of today's webinar, the RISE funding scheme. I will also show you some call statistics, and finally we go through the different parts of the proposal, and I will give you some tips with regard to proposal writing. Let me briefly explain you the setup of this webinar. The big window displays the slides of the presentation. On the upper right, you see a photo of the speaker. That's me. And below that photo, you find a chat window. You can either email your queries to Skłodowska-Curie, also msca@euresearch.ch, or and you will get a written answer after the webinar, or you can use the chat function and ask your question during the webinar. We will collect your questions and try to answer some of them during the presentation via the chat function and some at the end of this session. Let me say a word about the status of Switzerland in Horizon 2020. After being a third country and partially associated for a while, Switzerland is again fully associated to Horizon 2020, meaning that there are no restrictions in participation whatsoever for Swiss participants anymore. The RISE scheme is one of 5 Skłodowska-Curie actions which have a budget of roughly 6.2 billion euro for the total duration of Horizon 2020. Calls are issued in biennial work programs, and mobility is a key requirement in this program, which was formerly known as the Mobility Scheme. The Skłodowska-Curie actions are open to people from all over the world, and they fund all domains of research and innovation. They are bottom-up, meaning there are no topics predefined by the European Commission. Today's webinar is about one of the 5 Skłodowska-Curie actions, the Research and Innovation Staff Exchange Scheme, which aims at stimulating transfer of knowledge. In a typical RISE project, a consortium of organizations from different countries and sectors proposes a joint research and innovation program implemented by a secondment of staff, which can be students, postdocs, PIs, technical staff, research administrative staff, and even managerial staff. The maximal program duration is 48 months. However, 36 months is also common. The 2017 RISE call is currently open with a deadline on 5th of April this year. There will be an evaluation phase of around 3 months, and the results will be communicated in July, most likely. The earliest possible starting date will be in November this year, and the latest possible starting date will be in November next year. So, countries that are eligible for funding are all EU member states and overseas countries and territories linked to the member states. Then the associated countries as well, and some third countries that are listed on page 3 of the General Annex A to the work program. Countries that cannot receive funding but are welcome in consortia are Australia, Brazil, Canada, China, India, Japan, Mexico, New Zealand, Republic of Korea, Russia, and also the United States. Eligible institutions can be from the academic as well as from the non-academic sector. The non-academic sector is defined as any socio-economic actor not included in the academic sector. Definitions of both can be found in the Guide for Applicants. Okay, speaking of definitions, it is important to understand the difference between beneficiaries and partner organizations. Beneficiaries sign the grant agreement and claim costs, whereas partner organizations don't. They are responsible for the execution of the program. Only entities from member states or associated countries can be beneficiaries, and only beneficiaries can coordinate such projects. Seconded staff should have been actively engaged in or linked to research and innovation activities for at least 6 months prior to the first secondment. Early-stage researchers, experienced researchers, managerial staff, administrative, technical staff are all staff members that can be seconded. Important to note is that it is possible to second PhD students in such a project, but only if they are staff members. The minimum consortium size is 3 independent participants from 3 different countries. There are 2 possible minimum settings. You can have consortia composed of participants from member states or associated countries, plus a participant from a third country, an international partner. In such a setting, all participants can be from the same sector. If, however, you have a consortium composed of participants from only member states or associated countries without any participant from a third country, one of the participants needs to be from a different sector. So in the inter-European exchanges, where you only have participants from European member states or associated countries, which was the latter case in the slide just before, staff cannot be seconded from one country to the other without changing the sector. So these types of projects are the intersectoral ones. It is not possible to second people within the same country even if they would change sector. The other type of project is the international project, where you have at least one participant from a third country. In these projects, the sector is not relevant for the secondments. However, it is not possible to second people from one third country to another. So to illustrate this concept, I am showing you some examples of ineligible secondments. It is, for example, not possible to second a staff member from an organization located in Paris to an organization in Marseille, so within the same country. Or a staff member of an SME located in Latvia cannot be seconded to an enterprise in Bulgaria. Or a researcher located in an organization in Brazil is not eligible to be seconded to a university located in the United States. A next example it would be that a staff member of an SME located in Italy cannot be seconded to an affiliated SME in China. And this list is not exhaustive, of course. I just tried to illustrate the concept I explained before. The maximum project duration is 4 years, and each staff member can be seconded for a period of 1 to 12 months. The maximum size for a project, meaning the maximum amount that the EU will fund, is 540 person month, which corresponds to 2,430,000 euro. Yeah, exactly. In Swiss francs, this would be 2,603,617 Swiss francs. Okay, it gets interesting when the money comes in. So what I'm showing you here is what you can expect from such a RISE project. Very important to note is that the salary of the seconded staff is not covered by the EU contribution. Beneficiaries and partner organizations are expected to continue paying their salary during their secondments. The 2,000 euro per month that are paid to the staff member are a top-up allowance to support travel and accommodation. The institutional unit costs, which are the research, training and networking costs and the management and indirect costs, are shared between the beneficiaries. The 1,800 euro for research, training and networking costs can be used for laboratory costs, for example, or participation to conferences, etc. The 700 euro for management and indirect costs can be used for the financial management, for example, or for the administrative organization and implementation of the secondments. When you submit your proposal, you have to assign it to a certain evaluation panel so that the European Commission can find the right evaluators for you. The evaluation of such a RISE proposal is a peer review process. Every proposal is read by at least 3 individual evaluators, which are researchers in the field usually. There are 8 panels in total. You can see there is the chemistry, the social sciences and humanities panel, the economic sciences panel, then one for engineering panel, an environment and geosciences panel, life sciences, mathematics and physics panel. In the 2016 call, a total of 367 proposals were submitted. The highest number of proposals was submitted in the engineering panel, as you can see from this table. And also in this graphic representation, you can see that the 2016 RISE call had a success rate of 22.9%. So out of the 367 proposals that were submitted, a total number of 84 projects could be funded. In the 84 funded projects, 66% of the participants were from the academic sector and 34% from the non-academic. Most participants were from an EU member state. The average duration of a secondment was 2.16 months, and the average number of secondments per participant was 9.2. Okay. So, in case you're interested in submitting a proposal or simply want to have more information about the RISE funding scheme, it's important to know that via the Research Participant Portal of the European Commission, you have access to all information you need and the proposal submission system. You need to have an EU login, which was formerly the so-called ECAS login. Then you click on Horizon 2020, you tick the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions, open calls, and you can choose the RISE call there. On this call page that will open, you will find all the important documents. For example, the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions Work Program, in which the policy background for the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions is set out, or the Guide for Applicants, which can be considered as sort of user's manual. In this document, you find all necessary information, also for proposal writing. For example, about the structure of the proposal and the different definitions. Okay. I come to this structure of the proposal now, and there is part A of the proposal, which can be found and edited on the participant portal. In part A, you need to provide an abstract, some general information and specific information on the participants, and you need to fill the budget and secondments table. You will find an empty table of secondments on the electronic submission system, and the coordinator fills in the outgoing secondments from each participant. And the system automatically creates a summary budget table at the end. And finally, there's also the ethics table, which needs to be filled in if applicable. Part B of the proposal is the actual proposal. It has to be submitted as 2 separate documents. In the first document, which can be 32 pages maximally, you need to address excellence, impact, and implementation of your proposed project. The excellence part is weighted 50%, the impact part 30%, and the implementation part 20% of the total proposal. Each of these 3 parts is divided into different subchapters, all of which need to be addressed thoroughly. And I will now go through these 3 parts and have a look at all the different subchapters that need to be addressed. So the first part, as mentioned, is the so-called excellence part. This part weighs 50% of the total proposal and is important to address. It is really important to address all the sub-criteria as I mentioned before. Always keep the general RISE objectives in mind, which are transfer of knowledge and joint research and innovation with a sustainable impact. It's important to note that this is not only a regular research project. The first subchapter in the excellence part is about the quality and credibility of the project. In this subchapter, you should address your research and innovation goals. Describe briefly the state of the art and how we will go beyond it. And you should address the methodologies you use quite in detail and underline multidisciplinary aspects if there are. And if applicable, you should also address any gender issues already here in your project. Okay. I'm not going into further detail because this will take too long otherwise. Okay, I'm already addressing the second subchapter in this first excellence part. This is about the quality and the appropriateness of knowledge sharing. Here you should address your goals with regard to transfer of knowledge. You should describe how the planned secondments will contribute to those goals. And furthermore, you should describe your plans for events both during the secondments and the return phase. In a third subchapter in the excellence part, you will address the quality of the proposed interaction between the participating organizations. You should outline here what each partner will contribute and you should give details on the partner's expertises. And you should explain why it is beneficial for the institutions to take part in the transfer of knowledge measures. A word to the secondments. I'm showing you here on the right side a secondment plan. So the secondments, they should be well balanced overall. Each secondment has to be justified and you should describe who will be where and when. What you entered in part A of the proposal should correspond to what you present in the excellence part of this part B of the proposal. So the second part of part B of the proposal is the so-called impact part. This impact part weighs 30% of the total proposal. Also in this part, all subchapters need to be addressed. This is really important. And in this part, you should be able to point out the expected impact on staff member level, also on institutional level, and then also on the level of European society. So impact needs to be described on different levels. You should develop a vision of your future collaboration. In this part of your proposal, you should also describe detailed plans for dissemination, communication, and exploitation. And they should be included throughout the duration of the project, not only towards the end of the project, these measures. In the first subchapter of the impact part, you should address the potential and future career perspectives of the staff members. So you should describe who will gain new knowledge and how. You should point out the benefits for the researchers and link them to the EU policies about research careers and employability. In the second subchapter of the impact part, you are asked to describe new and lasting research collaborations, transfer of knowledge between the participating organizations, and also the contribution to improving research and innovation potential at EU and at global levels. So here you should create a vision of future collaborations, and you should point out plans for collaboration after the end of the project already. And you should make reference to the EU policies regarding international and intersectoral collaboration, if possible. In the third subchapter of the impact part, you are asked to describe the quality of the exploitation and dissemination measures. You should have a clear plan and know what your key target groups are and how, when, and via which channels you will reach them. This plan should be specific, as specific and detailed as possible. You should develop a plan for exploitation and dissemination of results. And the EU IP Help Desk has a lot of useful information and in an easy accessible form and also language. And furthermore, you should check the intellectual property rights with your institution and take the rights of the non-academic partners into account also. In the fourth and last subchapter of this part of the proposal, you should describe the quality of the planned communication measures. Also here, you should have a concrete plan and phrase your key messages according to your audience. I will show you an example on my next slide. You should not hesitate to work with the network of the different beneficiaries and also with their media offices, who can be of great help for such communication plans. You should address who will benefit, how you will reach these people, and how the research results could eventually be of interest and of impact towards society at large also. To summarize your communication activities, you can use a table, or you can also describe them in a specific chapter or combine the both. Try to go as much into detail as possible. The last of the three parts is the implementation part, which weighs 20%. As in the other two parts, it is important to address all subchapters. You start with the work plan and describe who does what, when, with which resources, and the management structure you choose should be appropriate and not too complicated. You should explain in this chapter why the participating institutions are the best ones for their tasks and why the consortium as a whole is more than the sum of the beneficiaries. The first subchapter is about the work plan. As a rule of thumb, you should have 3 to 4 scientific work packages, one for the management of the project and one for dissemination, communication and exploitation, and one for transfer of knowledge. This is not really not a rule. It is not mandatory to do it that way, but it's just for you as a rule of thumb. And a Gantt chart should be used for the exact time planning. You should not come up with too many deliverables, and it is not advisable to have less milestones than deliverables in your project. And finally, you should not forget to address the gender balance. The second subchapter of the implementation part is about the management structures and procedures, including risk management. You should lay out your management structures here in this chapter. You can describe here which sub-boards you have, for example, who reports to whom and how decisions are taken. Take into account that boards should be gender balanced as well. And the role of the coordinator should be outlined clearly. Yes, and finally, the risk table is crucial. There you should provide enough details. In the third subchapter of the implementation part, the institutional environment should be described. You should not duplicate the table of part 5, but rather describe how the participants have the right set of skills, expertise, and the right technical infrastructure. Also in terms of administration, human resources, and communication, it is good to mention quality labels such as charter and code here in this subchapter. And in the last subchapter of the implementation part, you should describe why your consortium partners are the only and best to carry out all of the project's tasks, which are the complementarities, and which are the synergies among the partners, and you should show their commitment. So the operational capacity of a participant has also to be checked. This means that the role of a participant in the project needs to match their current capacity to participate. So proposals must include therefore a description of the profile of the people who will be primarily responsible for carrying out the proposed work. You should not put the person's names though. Furthermore, any significant infrastructure or major items of technical equipment relevant to the proposed work should be described as well. And also, any partner organizations contributing towards the proposed work should be described. You should not forget the ethical issues, if applicable, and also you should not forget the letters of commitment. Then, gender aspects should not only be addressed with regard to the gender balance in the consortium, as I mentioned before, but also with regard to the gender dimension in the research itself. So maybe you can answer yourself the question, at what point down the line the outcome will affect men and women differently? And there are different quality labels worth having a look at, like the HRS4R label or the European Charter and Code for Researchers. You find the links in the presentation I'm going to send you as a PDF file in my follow-up email. It's nicer for the evaluators if your proposal is nicely layouted. So add graphics and tables wherever possible. And it's always valuable to have an additional pair of eyes look through the proposal. So maybe you want to let your peers or your NCP proofread your proposal once it is in a good shape. The abstract is used to choose the right evaluators and will be published on the website of the European Commission in case of funding. So do not only focus on the scientific goals and write the abstract last. Last but not least, choose a smart and catchy acronym and check if it isn't already in use. As you cannot submit a RISE project on your own, you need to find the right partners. In order to do so, you should activate your network. You might want to take a leaflet on RISE to your next conference. Or you send some basic information on RISE and outline your research idea to interested colleagues. And there is also a partner search tool available on Cordis. You find also the address in my slides. And on the Net for Mobility homepage, which is a Marie Skłodowska-Curie NCP project, there is a page dedicated to expressions of interest. Also there you might find partners for such a RISE project. The European Commission offers support via a well-working research enquiry service and also by a very useful FAQ page. Just a moment. And there is also a FAQ blog, which is run by the Net for Mobility project, which is also very useful in case you have questions. Here are some more useful links if you need more information on a specific topic. There's, as I mentioned before, the call page on the participant portal. Then the link to the Marie Skłodowska-Curie Actions work program 2016 and 17. As I mentioned, these work programs are issued biannually. Next will be triannually, most likely. Then you find the link to the official Marie Skłodowska-Curie website. Then a link to Euresearch, which is a very useful platform for mobile researchers. Then the European Commission's Horizon 2020 inquiry service I mentioned before. This is quite useful and well established service. Then a link to the national contact points, a guide to the submission and evaluation process, all of which might be of interest for you if you start the process of proposal submission or writing. And finally, here are our contact data. My colleague Isabel Spüler and I are the national contact points for the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. Please feel free to email or give us a call if you have questions, not only after concerning this presentation, but in general. You will receive a PDF version of this presentation along with the link to the recorded webinar as a follow-up once we uploaded it on our YouTube channel. So for the moment, all is said, I think, and we can start the question and answer session. Okay, a lot of, or some questions were already answered via our chat function by Juliane. And there is one question remaining, and it is, should we have less milestones than deliverables or more, or rather more? Okay, and the answer would be that it is best to have less milestones than deliverables, because a milestone cannot be a deliverable at the same time. Milestones are kind of stepping stones for future activities, like a website of a project, for example. And deliverables are typically concrete outcomes of the project, like a report. So, are there further questions that are open? In case you will have more questions once maybe you want to go through the presentation again, and maybe you will then have more questions. So as I told you, please feel free to get in contact with us and to ask your questions, really. It's best to use the MSCA at euresearch.ch email address. You can also give us a call. And you will receive the presentation and the link to the webinar in a follow-up email. We recorded it and it will be published on our YouTube channel. And also, in case you know of people who could be interested to watch it, please feel free to share it with them. Okay. I think with this, I would like to close this session and thank you very much for your interest and your participation. Have a good day.